reality of the IMF and World Bank, what they don't tell you. When a country runs out of money, where does it go? When inflation spirals and imports stop, who steps in to save it? The answer is always the same: the IMF and the World Bank. They arrive with promises of stability and reform, but behind those polished offices in Washington lies a power structure that decides the fate of entire nations. This is the reality of the IMF and World Bank and what their help really costs. Chapter 1. How they started. After World War II, the world was broken. To rebuild economies and avoid another Great Depression, 44 nations met in a place called Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. That meeting gave birth to two institutions: the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. The IMF's job? To keep currencies stable and stop financial chaos. The World Bank's job? To lend money for rebuilding and development. On paper, it was the perfect system. In reality, it gave the most power to those who already had it: the United States and its allies. Because who funds the IMF the most? The richest countries. And who gets the most voting power? Exactly, the richest countries. Chapter 2. How the IMF works. When a nation's economy collapses, it turns to the IMF for an emergency loan. But the money doesn't come for free. It comes with conditions. They call it structural adjustment. The IMF tells countries to cut spending, remove subsidies, privatize state companies, and open their markets to foreign investors. It sounds like tough love, but the reality is often pain. Hospitals lose funding, food and fuel prices rise overnight, and the poorest citizens pay for mistakes they never made. Chapter 3. The World Bank's role. The World Bank claims to fight poverty by funding development: roads, dams, schools, energy projects. But many of those loans create debt traps. Imagine borrowing billions for a dam or highway that never delivers the promised growth. You still owe the money with interest. Critics say the World Bank often funds projects that benefit corporations, not citizens. Big contracts go to foreign companies, while local communities are displaced or ignored. It's called development, but for many, it feels like exploitation. Chapter 4. Who really decides? Both the IMF and World Bank are not democratic. Every country is a member, but not every country has an equal vote. The United States alone controls around 17% of IMF votes, enough to block any decision it doesn't like. Europe, Japan, and other rich economies make up most of the rest. Meanwhile, Africa, with 54 countries, has barely 6% combined. So when policies are designed, who are they really designed for? For struggling nations, or for the investors and lenders in Washington, London, and Paris? Chapter 5. Real consequences. Across decades, the pattern repeats. In the 1980s, Latin America was hit by the debt crisis. IMF programs demanded austerity, cutting public spending to repay loans. Unemployment soared, poverty deepened. In the 1990s, Africa faced the same fate. Public services crumbled under IMF reforms. Today, countries like Pakistan, Egypt, and Sri Lanka find themselves negotiating the same deals: loans that bring short-term relief but long-term dependence. Each bailout feels like a lifeline until the next crisis comes, because debt, once created, never really disappears. Chapter 6. Why it still continues. So why do countries keep going back? Because they have no choice. Global trade and the dollar-based system are designed to make the IMF and World Bank unavoidable. When you're drowning in debt, the only rescue boat belongs to the same people who sold you the anchor. The reality check. The IMF and World Bank were created to bring stability and growth. But in reality, they've become the world's financial referees, deciding which countries rise and which ones sink. Their loans come wrapped in the language of reform and help, but the truth is simple: power follows money, and both belong to the same few hands. Until that changes, the system stays exactly as it is. Because for some, the crisis is not a problem, it's the business model. The next time you hear about an IMF loan or a World Bank reform, ask one question: who's really being saved?